What's up everyone, it's Dan with Main Deck, back here with another video for you guys. This is our second installment in our Grand Archive TCG Set 1 Dawn of Ashes full set review. In this one, we are going over the rare cards in the set. If you missed our other videos, they will be linked down in the description below and linked at the end of the video. And if you only see one video so far, the other ones haven't come out yet, so just stay tuned. Those are coming very soon. We are going to go over the entire set, give you my take on everything. Again, the caveat that I put in all these videos is that this is just my take as someone who's been watching the game since before the Kickstarter launch, but we haven't really had play experience with a lot of these cards, and the game is still kind of a new game. So don't take these opinions as gospel. I'm not telling you this is good, this is bad, but I'm going to give you my thoughts on everything and where I think everything belongs, just kind of from an initial look at everything. So without any further ado, I'm going to jump right in. We have 53 rare cards to go through. I'm going to do my best to go relatively quickly through these things, but I usually end up talking a whole lot, so we'll see how well I stick to that. But our very first rare card we're going to go through is starting with Regalia items, starting with Norm Element 1s. The first card is Bauble of Mending. So Bauble of Mending is a 1-cost Regalia item. It is Tamer Bauble, and that is relevant for this one. It does have a class bonus. When you banish Bauble of Mending, you draw a card, and the class bonus is up to one target non-human ally you control gets +1 health until end of turn. So this is another card in the sort of cycle of these cards that are 1 cost. They replace themselves and they give you some other little effect. I actually do kind of like Bauble of Mending here. Because that 1 cost, you know, my bar for this is like, if it's 1 cost and you just draw a card and it doesn't like grant you any other potential card advantage, it has to be a pretty good additional effect for me to really like it. In this case, giving that non-human ally +1 health can allow you to survive attacks or spells, especially good if your opponent like aims a burn spell at something. I don't know what you have Bauble of Mending in place. So basically it's going to make them have to play around it because no one's going to just walk into this. But if you can use it to make it so they have to like dump 2 cards into killing something or an attack in a card or something, and then you get to draw a card as well as sort of like either getting them to spend an extra card or use up an attack or something, I think you can kind of eke out a little more advantage here, where I actually do rather like this. I think this is a decent option for Tamer decks to run if they are concerned about their beasts and their animals getting aced by attacks and burn spells, which I think they usually will be, even though their animals are already pretty chunky. But I think it's a decent card for Tamer decks to run. Here we have another one of these similar cards. This is an Assassin one. In this case, the class bonus is the draw card on Blinding Orb, but it's a 1-cost Regalia that says banish it. Each opponent puts 2 cards from their hand into their memory. Class bonus draw card. This is another one which I actually do rather like. Because what you can do with this is you can kind of put your opponent out of really being able to respond to you, especially if your opponent's playing like Mage or something and you can see a Spell Shield Arcane coming. In our SR and UR review, we did go over like Coup de Grace, which is one of Assassin's potential like big finisher plays. And being able to sort of clear the way for you to coup de grace something without getting your opponent doing anything to like prevent damage or mess with it seems pretty useful to me. So the other thing that this does that I think some people won't quite think about right away is that making them put 2 cards from their hand to their memory means that if they try to materialize anything on the next turn, there's actually a chance that they're going to end up losing cards that they were intending to hold on to when they banish cards at random from their memory to materialize. So there are a few areas where there's actually a lot of potential for this to have quite an impact, and then it does get to draw a card as well if an assassin is playing it. I don't think I would play it outside of Assassin because 1 cost, you know, you don't really like playing that unless we might have decks that can really establish enough floating memory. You know, I'm thinking about these like water decks that self-mill and can potentially put a lot of floating memory into the graveyard. And maybe there's a chance where like then this cost isn't really something you're too worried about, and this can help you again just like clear the way for some sort of like alpha strike to win the game. But definitely an Assassin. This is a card that I do actually rather like. I think the 1 cost is worth it in there for that. Just being able to not, you know, not have your entire game plan upended by some sort of like fast spell in your opponent's hand or something. Chalice of Blood. Oh, this is an interesting one. So this is a 0-cost Regalia item. No class requirement here. Banish Chalice of Blood. Draw 2 cards. Activate this ability only if your champion has 20 or more damage counters on them. I've been thinking about this card a lot since I first laid eyes on it last night. I've gone back and forth a little bit. My current thinking is this is good. I think this is a good card. I think there's going to be a lot of decks where this is going to become a card that you can activate. 0 cost for 2 cards is a very, very large gain. You're spending your materialized step just to get 2 cards in your hand. And often in Grand Archive, I've said this in other videos, often games come down to just having that one extra card at the end of the game. At the end of the game is when you may be at above 20 damage on you. However, in matchups like Rye, they can easily play around you being able to activate this thing. So you have to be careful that the opponent isn't just going to set you up to get to like 18, 19 and then go for the kill at that point. But if your opponent's playing any character like Sylvie, Lorraine, or I think some builds of Xander will also, push the opponent above 20 before they go for a kill shot. And in those decks, this is just a killer card once you get to the late game. But this is definitely a card that can be dead sometimes too. So I really like this design. I think it's really interesting. I think I'm definitely going to try slotting this for a while, and maybe I'll just find out that it just isn't ever paying off. But I think I like this one. I think this is a good card. Channeling Stone. So this is a 1-cost Regalia item Mage Crystal with Banish Channeling Stone. The next card you activate this turn costs 2 less to activate. I think this is an interesting card too. It is 1 cost, but it effectively counts as you having 2 cards in your hand for the turn to pay costs only. I think this is a very reasonable card, and I think maybe I would just consider this in decks where I have like some very expensive like board wipes or something, or combo play cards that I really need to be able to activate on certain turns of the game. I can see decks like Fire Rye or something that are maybe not always getting their Purge and Flames active early enough. Putting in Channeling Stone as a way just to ensure on the turn they need it, they can materialize Channeling Stone to push out a Purge and Flames to wipe the board. And then that might be like the primary use of this. I think it's not something you're necessarily going to use every game. I think it'll just be when the opponent, in decks like that, it's when the opponent's putting pressure on you fast enough that you're not able to build up to a natural Purge and Flames. And you just really need that little bit of an extra cost reduction on a card. But it'll be interesting to see if there's anything that's costed so highly that you just want to play kind of like as soon as you can, where this becomes a way to try and sort of like cheat your way to it. But it's not really that different than just using a 0-cost draw card, right? Other than it's a guaranteed kind of thing. 1 cost reduced by 2, very similar to 0-cost draw 1 card, except you don't get to keep the extra card. But yeah, interesting card. We'll see. I'm not sure I'll slot it into my Rye decks, but I'll definitely think about it for some of them. Crystal of Argus. So this one is this one's a class bonus mage one, where the other one you didn't have to play it in mage. This one you do to get any effect from this. I mean, you can play it whatever, but it'll be a blank card. 1 cost. Your champion gets +1 level for every 3 enlighten encounters on them with class bonus. Yeah. This is a cool card. I think in the SR and UR video we talked about this Advent of the Stormcaller potential like combo deck that might exist, where you're trying to use Power Overwhelming to just max your level out. And Crystal of Argus is a card that could easily slot in there too when you kind of have the rest of the combo set up. I think this can give you the remaining levels you need before you pop a Power Overwhelming to like really put you to exceptional heights in your combo potential that turn. So I think this is a cool card, but I think it'll be very specific, right? I think you're going to have to play this sort of like Enlighten version, Enlighten counter combo version of a Rye deck. And I think the Rye Mana Weaver, the alternate level 3, where he's able to remove Enlighten counters to copy spells. This might be a card that you use in that to shore up the weaknesses of not having the natural level boost that Stormseer has. Because this will allow you to stack Enlighten counters and then still get kind of a decent level bonus for that turn in order to like properly combo off. So I could see it in that too. I think it's going to be decent in that. Drawn Blade, I really like this card. I think this one's cool specifically because I really like it. It's a card that works well with Spirit Blade and Soul from the SR video we talked about, which puts all swords with cost 1 or less into play. But normally this is just a 1 cost sword, 1 power, 1 durability, on enter, draw a card. Again, this is one where I feel like you're able to pay that 1 cost, you get the draw card, but the side bonus of this is you get to you do an attack with it, and that attack can actually, you know, that can you can use this to knock something out. You can you get the extra 1 damage you need to kill something, or just keep putting aggro on your opponent. Combined with like Lorraine level 2's ability to then get a damage boost and on kill draw card. You can draw the card from playing the sword. You drew the card when you play the sword, and then maybe the next turn you can level to 2, get a 3 damage attack off with it, and then kill something to draw a card with that. I mean, I like how that all plays together nicely. So this is a card I'm definitely going to be thinking about in Lorraine decks, because just being able to keep your cards flowing while also keeping your attacks going is exactly what Lorraine tends to want to do. Eye of Argus. So what was the other one? That was a Crystal of Argus. Okay, this is the Eye of Argus. This is actually a warrior bauble. And it has Banish Eye of Argus. Target ally you control gains True Sight until end of turn. Draw a card, and this one costs 1. So I see this as really like a metagame dependent card. You're probably not going to just slot this in your Takes All Comers deck unless you are like maybe you're playing a Lorraine deck with a whole bunch of allies, but like no direct damage spells. And if stealth is becoming a very popular thing for like assassin decks with stealth that are becoming an issue for you, you would slot this in. The Lorraine decks already have the sort of seeking, so the True Sight one. They already have a sword that they have access to that gives Lorraine True Sight, which lets you like ping off pesky Dream Fairies or something. But this would give you another option to be able to attack into things. But unless you can actually do anything with that True Sight, this is not a great 1 cost draw card ability. So you'd probably only put this in if you really think that you're going to come up with scenarios where this is useful. So if your opponents are playing a lot of stealth or something. Poison Coating Oil. So this is an assassin accessory regalia. Banished Poison Coating Oil. Target ally you control with stealth gets +2 power until end of turn. So I do kind of like this. I think there's some sneaky things you can do with this in combination with one of the SRs we went through was the map that allows all your stealth units to not be interceptable. I think there is potentially kind of like a stealth tribal thing floating around here where this is maybe a useful card. Effectively, this is spending your materialize step to deal +2 damage to something. That's what it looks like on the surface, right? But on the other hand, there are some units, some allies in the game that have critical, and that's where it starts getting a little more interesting, because if you can pump damage into something with stealth that also has critical, then if they don't discard the cards to critical, then you're going to deal +4 damage instead of +2, and the damage doubles. And anytime you start to kind of like compound these values, that's when a card like this starts to get more valuable. So there's definitely not going to slot this into any deck, but if you have these kind of combinations of stealth things and things with like critical or other ways to double damage or something, that's where you start to, I think this starts to get to be a good use of space in your material deck. Sword of Adversity. So I just straight up like that this is another 0 cost sword for Lorraine to be able to pick from. This is definitely pegged for warriors. It's got class bonus on it. It's a 1 power, 1 durability for 0 cost with Sword of Adversity gets +1 power as long as you control no allies. I did mention I think there's going to be some sort of a very sword and a sword attack focused deck, like maybe with Galatine as a sword option as well. So if you're trying not to go wide with your warrior deck and you just want to be attacking with cards like maybe Savage Slash or something, Opening Cut, whatever, as often as possible, this Sword of Adversity is going to give you the best power benefit. Very similar to Ornamental Greatsword, really, which gives a +1 power to an ally you control, but this gives it to the sword itself instead. So I would definitely think about it for those decks. It's a nice option to have. Storm Tyrant's Eye. So we are done with the norm ones. We're going on to some advanced elements. This is an arcane card with cost 0. So again, you have to be Rye level 3 as of set 1, but maybe future sets will have different arcane champions at level 3, Arcane Warrior or something. But for now, this is going to be Rye level 3, Mage Artifact, Banish Storm Tyrant's Eye, reveal cards from the top of your deck until you reveal an arcane element card. Deal unpreventable damage to your champion equal to the amount of cards revealed this way. put one of those cards in your hand and the rest on the bottom of your deck in a random order. So this is an absolute like combo enabler, or just like trying to seek out your Arcane Blasts in your deck or something. So Rye decks are very, very intent on just trying to find Arcane Blasts and doing whatever they're doing with them to try and deal damage to the opponent, unless you're doing this, Advent of the Stormcaller potential combo thing, which may be a meme, but we'll see. And the one thing that holds me back a little bit on this card is that in certain matchups, this is a scary card because you're going to be taking a lot of damage. You can just kill yourself if you're very unlucky. But here's my thought on that. In those matchups, if you have to dig like 5, 6, 7, 10, whatever cards to find an arcane card, and you're at the point where you're that much life away from losing the game, I think you weren't going to win that game anyway, right? Because you're generally so dependent on finding these arcane cards to win the game that finding like Arcane Blasts or Advent of the Stormcaller or something, that unless you had a way to dig those 10 cards before the opponent dealt that last like 6, 7, whatever damage to you, then I think it was just going to be over for you. So this at least gives you the option though of like being able to dig and find something. And then in some matchups, like in Rye versus Rye matchups, this might give you that advantage you need to be able to kill them before they kill you. Those matchups are very much about just like comboing off before the opponent does. So I actually really like this card. I think this is one that I would put in most Rye decks. I would save a slot for it because you don't have to play it, right? You can play it if you have the available life to go for the dig. If you need the dig, it's there. But like, there's no other card in the game that's just going to, for no cost, find you the next arcane card. And that I think is actually a very huge thing for Rye to have. So I think this is, Currently, I'd almost consider this like I think a staple slot in your material deck for Rye decks. Even if you don't always play it, I think you need it there just to win some of the matchups that you weren't going to win otherwise. We have a Crux Regalia here, Sword of Avarice. This is a 2-cost sword with 1 power, 1 durability. On enter, draw a card. Class bonus, draw 2 cards instead. This card I really like because, again, Lorraine gets to do things with Crux like Spirit Blade Ascension to bounce other weapons back to get these expensive Crux weapons out. Again, that's just that anytime you have that opportunity to draw that extra card, I think that is a big deal. I would gladly play this in addition to Prismatic Edge in the deck to have options available to get what I need given the situation. So it's a weak weapon otherwise, but you can use Ascension to bounce it, to play it, draw 2, use Ascension, bounce it, replay it, draw 2 more. This can give Lorraine a serious edge in the game. So I think it's very nice. I think it's a good card. There's an Assassin Sword. Interesting, this one isn't a dagger. This is a sword, but this is an Assassin Sword Regalia weapon. Carnwenin, Shrouded Edge. Very cool looking card, by the way. It's a 1-cost, 3 power, 1 durability weapon that has class bonus. Attacks using Carnwenin can't be retaliated. So this is a card I peg as very important for that like coup de grace style assassin deck, because what you really want to do every game possible is set up the opponent to have 14 or less life left, and then get a clean turn where you materialize Carnwenin after you hit level 3, which Assassin's very able to like hold on. They've got multiple methods of kind of disrupting the opponent to make sure you can get to this stage. Then materialize Carnwenin, and then coup de grace with all your preparation that you set up. Remove the 4 preparation counters. Use Carnwenin to add 3 damage to the attack. Now it's a 7 damage attack with critical 4. And if they don't discard 4 cards from their hand, or if they can't discard 4 cards from their hand right now, they take 14 damage from that attack. And because we're using Xander here, if they're playing any champion that had to rest to attack or something in the previous turn, it's actually going to be a 16 damage attack because you get the inherited bonus from Xander's level 2 to rested ally or rested units that you attack. So that's where this is definitely super important. However, that it is also just a nice thing to have. Attacks using Carnwenin can't be retaliated means that you can use this to clean out something that would otherwise push damage back onto Xander, which is a nice thing. But I think really, when I see this card, I'm thinking that coup de grace play every time. But Xander also has plenty of other attacks you can use with it, but just doesn't have the ability to like bring weapons back the way Lorraine does. So that's the only unfortunate thing. It's pretty much just a one-shot. We have a Terra Regalia here, Horn of Beast Calling. So this is a 1-cost Regalia with Banish Horn of Beast Calling. The next Beast ally card you activate this turn costs 3 less to activate, and class bonus draw a card. This, I think, is a spectacular card obviously in a Tamer deck where you have beasts that you want to play, especially if you're playing some of these larger beasts in the game. We'll go through some of them towards the end of this list here too. But this effectively counts like 4 cards on the turn that you banish it if you do activate a beast card. And I think that can be just a huge resource advantage. I mean, I don't think there's much more to say. I think this is just, you play a big beast with it, and then you get another card also. So, it doesn't even actually, I will say one thing. It doesn't even have to be a big beast. You can use this to play, Arima from the super rare list, for free and draw a card, which again, like no matter what you're playing, you're just like, as long as you're playing a beast that turn, you're getting a lot of value back. So I think it's great. Okay, so on to the main deck cards. We're going to start with Dungeon Guide, and I don't know what there is to say about Dungeon Guide that hasn't been said. Dungeon Guide is one of the best cards in the set. It's the card you want to make sure you get 4 of as soon as you can, I believe. Dungeon Guide it's a solid, I mean, a decent statted creature. 1 power and 3 health is like kind of annoying to deal with for 3 costs. With on enter, you may banish 2 random cards from your memory to level up your champion. Never use this to level to 1. Just don't, there's no point to doing that, but using it to level to 2, or especially using it to level 3, where you get to actually get a 1 card discount on leveling to 3, because you only have to banish 2 cards, lets you get a tempo advantage on your opponent. It gives you great control over the cards that you're banishing, because you place 3 cards down to play Dungeon Guide, and then 2 of those are getting banished. So your odds are pretty good at getting the cards banished that you want to, and not and you don't have to end up losing more stuff. You can keep playing out your turn and do other things. And the tempo advantage is just huge. Not to mention, Dungeon Guide allows you to do the really cool tricks with Lorraine and Xander as well. Who both champions like to attack, and whenever your champion levels up, you actually get to awaken your champion. So when you get to level up during your turn, through Dungeon Guide or through like Beseech the Winds from the SR list, you get to awaken your champion as well, which means you get to attack once, play Dungeon Guide, level up, then attack again with the newly leveled champion. So Dungeon Guide's incredible. It's just a top tier card, period. Okay, Cemetery Sentry. So this is a 2 attack, 2 health, 4 cost warrior human with no class requirements whatsoever. With on enter, you may discard a fire element card. If you do, draw a card. I think this card's great. I think this is definitely a useful card. One thing that we find in Grand Archive is that allies die pretty quickly. There are a lot of allies with nice tempting like on attack abilities. You can't usually guarantee you're going to get those more than one time. So what I like about the Cemetery Sentry is that the stats are decent. The 2 attack is relatively threatening. The 2 toughness means they do have to have like something. They can't just use Sparklight to deal with it, or attack with like a Dungeon Guide or something. But on enter, it gets to immediately let you discard a fire element card to draw a card, which allows you to filter for certain cards. Importantly, this allows you to get floating memory cards into your discard pile without having to pay for them. Sometimes like Sparklight isn't very useful, like when there's no 1 toughness things out there. And it'll let you filter those things in. There's also a number of fire cards that want you to banish fire cards from your discard pile. And this helps with that. Not to mention there are sometimes, in fact, in the ultra rare Terra card, requires you to banish 4 animals or beasts, and there are a number of fire animals or beasts. So you could play this potentially in a Tamer deck even, just to try and make sure you get animals and beasts in your discard pile to set up for that. This would be a non-animal or beast, and as I mentioned, I think there's going to be sort of a tightrope to balance exactly how many of each thing are in your deck, because you definitely want lots of animals and beasts. But I think there's a number of possibilities for this. I love the ability to discard fire element cards to set up floating memory or set up other cards that like to banish those cards as a resource. And just filtering for more cards is good in, I don't know, just basically every deck. So I don't think it goes in every fire deck, but I think that there are decks that, if your deck isn't being like massively aggressive, you might definitely like having this in as a way to just sort of build resources over time instead. So I can definitely see mages playing this card. But I'm not sure who else, but I think other decks will want to play it too. I think it's a good card. Devastating Blow. So this is a 3-cost attack with 3 power, and it's a Guardian/Warrior sword. And that's cool because it's one of our few Guardian class bonus cards. It's also Warrior, but Guardian class bonus cards, we look forward to the addition of the 3 remaining classes to the game. This will be something Guardians can use as well. It has class bonus and level 3+. Devastating Blow gets +4 attack and can't be retaliated. So obviously when you get to level 3, this attack is massive. If you're playing a fire deck that's trying to attack to win the game, you're probably going to play this card because 3 costs for 3 damage is, I mean, it's not incredible, but I mean, it's not the worst thing in the world. You can still use it to knock out most allies or put a chunk of damage on the opponent. But when you have this late in the game, this is a huge damage attack for just 3 cost with no other setup required. So yeah, it's a good attack. Works early, works late. Disintegrate. Now, I'm excited to see how much play this card gets. This is an 8-cost slow spell, mage spell with class bonus efficiency. So I don't know if you'll play this outside of mage because 8 costs is just too massive. You need that efficiency to really get use out of it, I think. But this is the most flexible single target removal. This is the second most flexible single target removal in the game with destroy target ally or regalia. I think that's pretty huge though. I think this is a card that I would slot at least a couple copies of in mage decks because this allows you to remove gigantic allies against Tamer. It allows you to remove important regalia against other mage decks. If they're trying to set up, if they try to get like an Arcanist Prism down or something, you can destroy that. This allows you to deal with certain swords that are getting annoying. If an opposing warrior plays Clarent and they're trying to prevent your board wipes from working, you can just disintegrate the Clarent. I mean, I think it's flexible. And when you get to a high enough level, so, in mage, ideally you're playing the higher level mage, the Rye Stormseer or something, where this can just be a free spell late in the game. And I mean, I think that can be very massive. So I think this is a very good card. So here we have one of the melody/harmony cards. This is one of the fire ones. And this is one of the reasons why I'm really interested in checking out how the fire melody harmony deck works. Fire music deck, but this is a 2-cost action mage skill harmony, but it has no class bonus anywhere on the card, and it is a slow action with banish any amount of fire element cards from your graveyard. So again, there we're seeing that graveyard setup being important. Your champion gets +1 level until end of turn for each card banished this way. So I think this works great in mage as well as tamer. Both decks do want to see higher levels happen. And then harmonize. If you've activated a melody card this turn, choose any amount of units and deal level damage split among them. So you get that after you get the level bonus from banishing the fire element card. So I can see in the last video in the super rare ultra rare video, we talked about this advent of the Stormcaller combo deck. I can see that being like a fire Rye build that also can play some of this. It doesn't actually necessarily even need to play too many other melodies, but if you can fit some in to be able to get a harmonized combo off and get that extra damage from Erupting Rhapsody, that can be really strong because effectively getting harmonized on this is just about as good as playing a fireball, but it's also on a card that's increasing your level a whole bunch. So I think this is a reason to try and fit some music into a Rye deck. But even without that, I don't actually mind this card just as another way to, in the late game, get a huge level increase, especially if you are running cards like Cemetery Sentry and stuff, ways to set up your discard pile. To be able to just, if you can pay 2 and then get a level boost of like 3, 4, 5, this can just make a huge dent in your efficiency plays for the turn. So I think this is a great card. This is one of the reasons I'm really curious about fire music deck as opposed to some of the other ones. Okay, Flame Sweep. So we have a warrior class bonus card with 4 cost. It's an attack warrior sword with 1 damage. It has cleave, which means it attacks all units a chosen opponent controls and cannot be intercepted. However, that's very low, obviously, right? A 1 damage attack on all units doesn't really help that much, but class bonus level 2+, it gets an additional +1 damage. And then I think we're starting to get a little more juicy, because you have to keep in mind also with these cleave attacks, you can still apply a weapon to them. So if you can get a 1 or 2 damage weapon on top of the 2 damage at level 2, or importantly for like Lorraine, when Lorraine hits level 2, that turn she naturally gets a +2 damage bonus, as well as she has on ally kill draw card. That's where Flame Sweep on its own becomes a 4 damage cleave attack that draws you a card for every ally it kills that turn with Lorraine level 2. So this is obviously, I think this is a great card for Lorraine as its class bonus. That's who it's going to be in right now. But I think Fire Lorraine decks are going to always run some number of these, because that's how they don't lose to opponents going wide. All right, we have an Assassin skill reaction here. Immolation Trap. It costs 2. It is a fast action, as all of these Assassin traps are. I love that the Assassins have all these little traps to play with. This one has class bonus. This card costs 2 less to activate. So this is a free card to play out of Assassins. You're going to have to be a little careful, I think, playing against Assassin decks, because there's a number of free actions that Assassins have access to. Which is very powerful because it doesn't put anything else into their memory. It allows Assassins to have very good memory control and banish the cards they actually want to banish as they are still interacting with the opponent. This one says destroy target damaged ally. And I like this card actually a decent amount, but you do have to play around it appropriately. You have to personally play with it appropriately. One thing that you can do that I think some people won't see coming until it's happened to them once or twice is you can keep allies back. Like Dungeon Guide is a great example of one that has low attack that would, like, you can plink a damage on your opponent with it, and that's usually going to be the right play. But sometimes you can keep an ally like that back, or perhaps a better yet, an interceptor or something. You can, if the ally's attacked, or if you intercept an attack and then you just plink 1 damage onto something. A lot of times, if you have like a 1/2 interceptor, the opponent's going to attack with like a 2/2 or something that'll kill it and won't die. And then you'll be able to like retaliate with your interceptor, and then Immolation Trap to kill the opponent, the opposing ally. And they won't necessarily see that coming, because a lot of our play so far has been like, well, you only retaliate when the damage actually matters. A lot of people don't just retaliate randomly like that. And so a lot of people feel that it's pretty safe to attack into allies or interceptors like that. And this will prove them wrong. Another nice thing this does is it does make Ignite the Soul. That's what it's called. Sparkle. I keep saying the wrong, whatever. Ignite the Soul. It makes Ignite the Soul a kill spell that still has floating memory. So it's nice to have access to stuff like that too. All right, Rending Flames. This is probably one of my favorite rares in the set. I really like this card a lot. I love the design on this. It's a 3 cost, 3 damage, Assassin/Warrior sword attack. I think this is one reason you'll see a lot of this card played. A lot of these Assassin Warrior fire decks will be relying on this card to get some of their meaty damage in. It has class bonus on attack. You may banish 3 fire element cards from your graveyard. If you do, Rending Flames gains whenever this attack would deal damage, it deals double that damage instead. So again, we have this thing that needs to feed off of fire cards in your graveyard. So you do want to be able to set that up. But we also have another way where all of our compounding damage buffs can be doubled, much like with critical on coup de grace. This is another attack for Assassins and also Warriors to be able to stack a ton of damage into it. For Warriors, obviously, Lorraine Crux Knights level 3 or Lorraine Weapon Master or Lorraine Blade Master level 2, getting the +2 damage buff for the turn, can turn on some pretty huge attacks with this thing. And then just using anytime they have access to like a 3-power weapon, like again, the Assassin's Sword from earlier, you can stack that on as well as the Assassin's Xander's level 2's attacking a rested ally +1 damage buff stacks onto this very nicely, where you can start to turn this from 3 to 5, 7 base damage, 10, 14 damage when it's doubled. It starts to get pretty huge. Generally, you probably are saving this for when you can double it, because it's not that hard to double. And 3 for 3 isn't like that great, but I guess if you really need to, you can attack with it early on. But importantly, there's no level requirement to this. So as soon as you can set this up, I think this is a key part of very fast fire aggro decks as well. All right, let's look at some water cards now. So Frozen Nova is an 8-cost mage spell with slow. So you're only playing on your turn. It has efficiency with class bonus. So only mages get efficiency. It's probably a lot like are, I'm going to remember all the names of these cards eventually. Probably a lot like Disintegrate, where you're probably only playing this in Mage because it's going to be very costly otherwise. But with that 8 cost with efficiency, it can be completely free in Mage decks. This deals 1 damage to all allies and rests them. And then those allies don't wake up during their controller's next wake up phase. I really like this. I really like that Mage in Mage in Water does have a number of direct damage components to it. The 1 damage to all allies is great for dealing with like Squirrel aggro decks, but also just it buys you a lot of time is what happens here. It can, if your opponent's going wide, you can blast their board, maybe kill off a thing or two, and then everything else stays rested for the next turn, so it's not coming back in at you again, which is really nice. There's also some cheeky things with this that you kind of have to watch out for, because you could I guess theoretically play this in a Tamer deck with Blue Slime, but Blue Slime, who's I think a card we'll look at in uncommons, that's an uncommon, yeah. So when we look at Blue Slime is a card that when it takes damage, it gets a buff counter on it. So if your opponent's playing Water Tamer and plays Blue Slimes, you have to be very careful with your Frozen Novas because you're also going to buff up the Blue Slime. Yeah, I think this is a sweet card just to be able to buy time with, and as you get to higher level with your Mage, it can be a completely free way just to again conserve those turns so you can continue to build up and find your combo. All right, Lakeside Serpent. So this is, I think, a very interesting Water Tamer card. This, to me, is one of the reasons you would play Water Tamer. This and potentially the music setup, the music engine for it. But Lakeside Serpent is a 5-cost Tamer Beast Serpent with 3 attack and 5 health. Importantly, it is a beast, so you can reduce its cost using the Terra card we looked at earlier. This one, Horn of Beast Calling. So Horn of Beast Calling does work on it. It has Pride 6, so you do need to have a high enough level for it to attack. But 6 isn't too bad to get to either. That's certainly doable. And as class bonus, Lakeside Serpent gets +1 attack for each water element card in your graveyard. I love abilities like this. I'm a Timmy at heart, so anytime I see numbers get really big, I get excited. If you haven't been able to tell that so far. So this is another potential payoff for that kind of like mill deck, but this would maybe be a Tamer focused one. It'd have to be because it doesn't get the damage bonus unless it's in Tamer. So if you can do some like self-milling and get water element cards in your graveyard, take advantage of having some good water floating memory cards, this thing can be a massive swing as the game gets a little deeper. So I think this is an interesting card. I'm excited to see what Water Tamer decks really look like, but I think this will be a card that you'll probably want to play some amount. All right, Lunette Frostbinder Priest. So this is a unique ally at rare. And this is a card I am a huge fan of this one. So it's a 3-cost Cleric Human. It has no class bonuses though, so anyone can play this, but I think Mage is going to really like this one in particular. It has 1 attack, 1 health. Allies your opponent's control enter the field rested. That ability right there is already huge. It makes it, first of all, hard just to deal with her because you can't play an ally and attack with it. You have to use an attack card or something. It slows down the opponent's aggro until she's been dealt with. Now, she only has 1 health, but she also has balance. Lunette gets +3 health as long as the amount of cards in your hand and memory are equal. And one thing that I really like about this card in particular is very different than Gildas from the Super Rare review, where Gildas got attack for having balance. So you really wanted to like balance. You want to balance before you attack and then attack with her. Lunette, I actually think in the right deck, so in like maybe like a Water Mage deck with a good amount of like fast action cards, what you can kind of do is just get Lunette out there, play whatever you need to, but generally you're not probably playing a ton on your turn if possible. And then on your opponent's turn, you want to have the opponent make some sort of play to deal with Lunette. If they're playing an aggressive deck, they're going to want to attack Lunette or deal damage to her, an action card or something to be able to get rid of her. If they're doing anything that doesn't just destroy outright, that instead does some amount of damage, you can actually be pretty cheeky. If it's less than 4 damage that's being dealt, you can play a fast action from your hand for whatever other benefit it gives. Like maybe it's some sort of draw spell or some one of the water spells that messes with your opponent's memory or something that would put you into balance at that point, so that Lunette suddenly goes from having 1 toughness to having 4 toughness. 4 health. And then that damaging spell, that attack no longer actually kills her, plus you get the benefit of the spell you played. Using that, you can kind of blank attacks, you can blank action cards and grant yourself some additional compounding resource gain. And I really like that she has that option open. I'm always excited by cards like this. You do have to think pretty hard. You have to have the right cards in hand to be able to achieve balance. So you definitely want to, you can't just throw her into anything. You probably want to build the deck around it specifically with those fast actions. But the more turns you can keep her out, the slower your opponent's going. And that's why I say I like her in Mage, because Mage really wants to just slow the board down quite a bit. But I can see this being useful even in other decks where you're just trying to have a better board than your opponent, and stopping your opponent from, like it may be a warrior deck where you're going wider, stopping your opponent from playing more allies in play to deal with your allies will allow you to maintain your aggro on them. Which I think is an interesting option too, but I think you won't have as much balance control there. So that's why I really like her for that, but we'll see where people end up playing her. I think she's pretty good though. Okay, Miss Resonance. So this is a Harmony card. This is a reason to play a music engine in water. Miss Resonance is a 5-cost action, fast action with allies you control, get +1 health until end of turn. That's actually a very questionable return for 5 cost. However, the Harmonize is where it's at on this thing. So this is I think this is a really cool card. And I think this is where you would like probably build your water music tamer deck around trying to find Mist Resonances and activate this. The Harmonize is, if you've activated a melody card this turn, allies you control assign damage with their life stat instead of power stat until end of turn. And a lot of water allies have higher life stats. We saw that Lunette goes to 4 life. For example, that Water Serpent, Lakeside Serpent is 5 life naturally. However, Lakeside Serpent's kind of bad with this because you don't, this power stat buff doesn't help you anymore. But yeah, there's like a 1/6 vanilla turtle that like is probably not very good unless you activate this thing. Then they get the plus life stat buff, and then that also is a power buff for them. So I also really like that this is a fast spell. You can use it on your opponent's turn just to save your things, which might be useful sometimes. But also you can attack with like a 1/6 turtle, and the opponent will be like, okay, well, I'm not gonna intercept that. The attack's fine. And then you can go, okay, Mist Resonance. It's now a 1/7. It's dealing 7 damage to your champion, and it's too late to intercept. And I love that is an option as well. So I think this is a really cool card. I do like the idea of playing a water music deck with this too. Nia Mistveiled Scout. So this is another unique ally. This is an assassin class bonus one, although the class bonus on this one is only giving it stealth. And that's stealth is obviously a very strong ability, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's an unplayable card in other decks. So it's a 3-cost ally with 1 power and 3 life, and it has on enter, look at target opponent's memory, then choose any card name. Cards with the chosen name cost 1 more to play. And I mean, the reason you probably wouldn't play this in other decks is because you really want her to try and last as long as possible to stifle the opponent's plays. But I do rather like this card. I think being able to just see your opponent's memory and get an idea of where they're going is actually pretty valuable on its own. But then being able to then sort of direct where they're going by locking down cards and making it harder for them to play them on a unit that it takes a little bit to get rid of. 3 life is enough to be able to get it around a few basic lower damage removal spells, and the stealth means that it can't be attacked. I think this is a pretty sweet little disruptive card. Now the question will be if Water Assassin is good enough with its disruption package to be able to warrant her, but I think it's definitely possible. So I think she's a pretty cool card that I'm going to be looking at. She is unique though. You can only have 1 in play. You can't get multiple. And that is relevant because obviously it'd be awesome to have multiple of these in play and lock down multiple cards or the same card multiple times, but you can't do that. Shroud and Mist. So here we have another assassin. This is an assassin spell with fast action for 5 costs. Class bonus. This card costs 2 less to activate, so assassins only have to pay 3 for this one. And this is a nice protective fast action with units you control gain stealth until end of turn. You can use this in response to an attack, and it will blank the attack as well. Which is obviously the time when you want to do that. But yeah, that's what it does. I don't know if there isn't like a ton more to say about this. Honestly, it's just another way. Again, Assassin is a fairly disruptive class, actually. And this is another way that they can just sort of disrupt what the opponent is doing. And Water Assassin, I assume, would play even more kind of tricky and disruptive than the other ones. Fire Assassin might be a little more just like damage oriented. Snow Fairy. This is a 3-cost Mage Fairy ally. It's got no class bonuses, so class doesn't necessarily matter for it. It's 1 power, 2 life with stealth, just like Dream Fairy is. Has on enter. Rest target ally you don't control. That ally doesn't wake up during its controller's wake up phase as long as you control Snow Fairy. So this is fun. It's very similar to what Dream Fairy does, and it kind of makes an ally kind of gone-ish for a little bit in a soft way. But it's in water and it does it just slightly differently. So I just like we've saw, Dream Fairy has been a very solid card, especially in mid-range versus mid-range matchups where you can lock away a powerful ally and kind of get the jump on your opponent by playing an ally that can push damage as well as, you know, do that disruptive element. Snow Fairy does all those same things, but just in water. So I think you're going to play it in decks that are like that. You're going to play it in other mid-range or control style decks where you're just trying to gain some advantage on your opponent. And if she can plink away a little bit while you're at it, that's also great. Stealth makes her hard to deal with. These fairies might be the reason why True Sight is something that you do want to pack into your material deck. We'll see. We have to see how the metagame really develops, but they're definitely solid cards. Tidal Sweep. This is an interesting one. So this is a 6-cost attack with cleave, and it does 1 damage. Warriors do get floating memory from it. So it is a high cost for cleave, and like when we compare it directly to our fire cleave spell from earlier, Flame Sweep costs 4 and then actually does 2 damage as long as you're using it at level 2. However, there's enough like ways to buff damage where I don't even know how relevant that +1 necessarily always is, other than the damage that goes in the opponent's champion. And this floating memory is a nice thing to it. I think the big thing about Tidal Sweep here is it's water's only cleave option. So if you're trying to play warrior with water right now, you're probably going to be playing Tidal Sweep. And for what it's worth, this does interact with like Mordred and with the sword that requires you to pay for its cost with floating memory cards. So it does what it needs to do, I think, in the warrior water deck, but I don't find it like a particularly exciting card. It just is sort of like, it's the cleave card that you have to play. I do find the art particularly exciting though. The art looks really awesome on this card, and that is Mordred doing a big slash. So kind of directing you towards the kind of deck where you're going to play this. All right. Tide Diviner. I love this card. I think this card is incredible. This is a 4-cost, 1 power, 1 life ally, mage human, no class bonus here. On enter, look at the top 1+ level cards of your deck, put one of those cards in your hand and the rest into your graveyard. It's a dude. You play this ally. It can do ally things. It can plink off some damage. It gives you value. That's what it does. And I just like anytime you can put things in and force the opponent to have to do things about, like, your opponent's going to waste an attack killing this thing probably, because otherwise that 1 damage might be the difference, you know? So like often they'll waste an attack getting rid of it, but you got your value out of it already digging for something. As you get to a high level in a mage deck, where if you're rocking a level of 8, 9, or your crazy combo, or you're like level 16 or something, you get to use this to look at your whole deck. And unlike a card like Scry the Skies, the card goes actually straight into your hand this time instead of going into your memory. So I think this card's great. I think it's going to see a lot of play. All right, here we have a Wind Harmony card. So this is a wind card for the Music Wind Engine. This is an action Tamer skill Harmony. Slow action, put a buff counter on each ally you control for a cost of 3. And it has class bonus Harmonize. If you've activated a melody this turn, draw a card as well. I think this is really what you're looking for in the Tamer music build. The buff ally and each ally you control is great. I actually think this card is playable outside of Tamer too, though. I think the Harmonize draw card is awesome, but I think that some Wind Lorraine decks might get a huge benefit out of having this as an option, even if it's just like a 1 or 2 of or something in the deck when they find it. If they have a big board, this can push a lot of damage for a cost that is relatively on par with other attacks, that other cards that do similar effects. Actually, I think a little cheaper because you get a power and life buff that last turn to turn too. Whereas all of Lorraine's kind of like board pump effects are until end of turn, unless they're like Banner Knight or something. So I think this card's great. Go wide with Tamer or go wide with Warrior. But if you're doing Tamer, you can do Melodies and Harmonies and get a lot of value out of this too. It's a great card. And here we have Dream Fairy. Again, it's going to be very similar to what we said about Snow Fairy. They're both actually surprisingly similar cards. Although this does remove the ally and it makes it so they can't activate it as long as you control a Dream Fairy. There's so many just like minor differences between them, but ultimately I think what they do is very similar. So I don't think I need to say too much more about this. It's a good card and it makes stealth very relevant. It's something you do need to be concerned about in mid-range matchups. Ensnaring Fumes is a 5-cost fast action assassin skill. The class bonus on here is just Floating Memory. However, the assassin has a unique, usually assassin will have a unique benefit here of you can also remove 3 preparation counters from your champion rather than pay its reserve cost. So you can get this completely for free if you have the preparation counters, which can be very relevant too. The effect is to return all allies to their owner's hands. And this is one where you can definitely build around having this as an option in your deck, playing it as a tempo play. Again, if you're playing that kind of disruptive assassin build, if you can play any other allies that do something on enter, give you any sort of benefit on enter, bounce them back, and then get to replay them again, that's a really big benefit. I think a lot of that stuff is a little more class bonus towards warriors. So, but like I said, the Floating Memory thing is the only class bonus here. It is possible just to play this in like, if you're going to try an interest, like a mid-range focus Lorraine shell, this could be a card you could play in it as a way to just deal with the board and then rack up on enter benefits. However, your opponent can get the same thing. So you do have to be careful about that. But I think the best thing about this is that it's fast. And with the assassin can play it with nothing else in their hand as long as they have 3 preparation counters, and just having that flexibility is really nice. And then being able to use it for Floating Memory the next turn is, I think, pretty awesome too. So I think this is a great card, but it will be in more like control oriented shells. And I would guess probably more often in things like Assassin and maybe like a mid-range Warrior thing. Whereas I think Mage maybe has some other options they might like a little more. Hurricane Sweep, if you've been playing any of the like Prelude stuff or any print and play stuff, you're familiar with this card. This is Lorraine's Cleave option in the first starter decks. It's a 5-cost 1 damage cleave attack with efficiency. So it tends to be cheaper than 5. And then Lorraine just likes to stack her sword and her damage pump buffs on it and get big old cleaves with it. So it's a great card. It cleaves. It's pretty cheap to play. That's what it does. It cleaves everything. It lets Lorraine draw a lot of cards on level 2. And that's what you really want to do. I think you're going to play this in any Wind Lorraine deck. All right, Phalanx Captain. This is a 5-cost warrior human with 1 power and 4 life. Class bonus on this one is it costs 1 less to activate for each human ally you control. So that's where this like 1 4 for 5 is not a great cost ratio, but this card can even be free actually if you have a huge board already. And the effect is other human allies you control get +1 power as long as they're attacking. So I think this card is pretty sick. I think human tribal is definitely something people are going to be playing with as an archetype, and I think it's going to have some legs to it. Might be a little hit or miss. Like it's going to depend on how often you get together Phalanx Captain, Banner Knight, and any of your other just like, honorable vanguards. You have enough like spam creatures, spam allies out there to fill the board. But when you can set that up and when your opponent can't find like the cleave spell or the board wipe or something to deal with you, you're going to push a lot of damage out of nowhere really fast. So I think the card's awesome. It's obviously just like the Lord, the enabler for human tribal. And so that's what it does. We have Scattering Gusts next. So Scattering Gusts is a 4-cost cleric mage spell with fast. The class bonus on this is to put an Enlighten counter on your champion, which is very good for mage. I'm interested to see if clerics use that at all. I think this might be hinting that they might use that a little bit. But at the same time, I think class bonus is actually not the class bonus here is not like that important, though it's very good in those decks, but it doesn't mean it's unplayable in other decks. It's not like class bonus efficiency or something. And I think there are decks that are going to want to play this anyway. Suppress up to 2 target allies makes you banish them and then return to their field under the owner's control at the beginning of the next end phase. And being able to suppress your allies, again, like I mentioned earlier, Warrior does have a number of good like on-enter abilities that they are happy to reuse when they can. And Tamer has some like that too, especially once they get to level 3 and get some Terra allies out there. So I think Scattering Gus is a card that you will really like having access to in a lot of decks. But it's obviously like especially good in Cleric and Mage decks if you can really take advantage of it, either offensively or to just gather more resources off of your own on-enter effects. But yeah, it's a flexible card. It does a lot of things, and I think a lot of decks can play it and will enjoy it. So I think this one is going to see a good amount of play with some of the powerful on-enter effects we already have seen. Speaking of which, Tactful Sergeant is an example of what Wind does on enter that makes it so good. This is a 4-cost, 1 power, 4 life ally warrior human. It has no class bonus whatsoever, though, so you can play this in any of those decks where you're trying to maybe do some kind of blinking shenanigans, suppressing shenanigans. It has on enter, if your champion has attacked this turn, draw a card into your memory. So the catch to that, of course, is you want to play a champion that attacks. You could put this in a mage deck, but then you have to put a way for your mage to attack, which maybe people will do. I'm not sure, but I'd say it's less likely. I like this kind of like soft class requirement where like it's definitely best in warrior or assassin, but it doesn't have to be played in those. And a crafty deck builder can maybe find a way to get some synergies out here that people weren't expecting. But yeah, it's a draw card on play as long as your champions attack this turn. So it replaces itself in your hand. It puts a body on the board. It is a human, so it works with the human tribal thing. It has a huge toughness, so it's kind of a huge life, so it's kind of hard to deal with. Yeah, it's a great card. Good card. All right, Zephyr. So this is an interesting, just 1-shot, 2-cost, fast spell, no class bonus. It's a cleric mage spell with suppress target ally or regalia, and I like that regalia option. I think that's really interesting. I think, despite it being a cleric or mage spell, this is a card where actually a warrior can look at this and think about how they can blink their, like Lorraine can blink her big crux weapons, the Sword of Avarice or the Prismatic Edge, in order to get their on-enter effects again. Or it can just blink like a Clarent to restore all the durability to it or something. You can use it to suppress a sword that's being targeted by your opponent's disintegrate. I'm gonna bring it up again. So if your opponent's targeting your nice sword with disintegrate or something, you can then use Scattering Gus, you can use Zephyr to suppress it, to basically blank the target, negate the spell that's being cast, and it comes back in. And if it had an on-enter, you get that effect again. This is great with Drawn Sword, just to get another card draw off of it too. Yeah, I mean, it's again a flexible spell. I love these suppress spells because they're very flexible. And then likewise, offensively, you can use it to remove an opponent's ally that could be intercepting while you get an attack in or something. So, or suppress an ally that's attacking you so that it doesn't get its attack off and then it comes back in a turn. So it's flexible. They're very flexible spells, and I really like that. Okay, so we are moving on to the advanced element cards, and then we are going to be closing this video out. So we're starting with Anger the Skies. Anger the Skies is, again, another well-known arcane spell from the Rye starter deck. This is the arcane board wipe. It costs 3. It deals 3 damage to all allies. Class bonus, it deals 4 damage to those allies instead. It's a slow spell. It is a great board wipe. It does require you to hit level 3, but it's always been there for me when I really needed it. I could level to 3 and then Anger the Skies just to clear the board and give yourself some breathing room. So it's a board wipe. In Arcane, I think a lot of Rye decks will still want to play a couple copies of this, because usually just having 1 like 4 of board wipe isn't necessarily very reliable. It's good to have a little bit more in there. So you might run a couple of these as just additional options instead. So Arcane Elemental, this is an interesting, there's a couple of rares here in Arcane that are going in a very different direction than what we've seen Rye do before, which I really like, because it means that you can tweak your deck to play it slightly differently depending on how you like it to play, and these differences can make a major it can have a major impact on how the opponent's able to respond to you. So this Arcane Elemental actually gives Rai an attacking option with an ally, a strong attack option. This is an ally that costs 7. The class bonus is almost efficiency. It's kind of different. This card costs 1 less to activate for each arcane element card in your banishment. So if you are playing, you probably want to be playing the Rai Stormseer, the version of Rai that gains a level for every arcane card in your banishment. And in that case, then this card will also be reduced based on the number of arcane cards in your banishment. And ideally, you want to try and hit 3, 4, 5, 6 cards in there by the time you are leveling up. 6 is pretty hard to hit. You don't always hit that, but if you can get like 4 or 5, that's usually you're having a pretty good game. At that point, this arcane element costs 3 or 4 to play instead. It is a Pride 7, and that's why you probably want to be playing Stormseer, because you still need to then have like a level 7 in order to be able to attack with it. But it is a 7 power, 7 life with on attack at the beginning of the next end phase, banish Arcane Elemental. So it's a one-shot, basically 7 damage swing in ally form rather than as a spell. So it does, if your opponent's trying to play around you playing action cards to deal damage, this gives you a route to deal that damage that isn't reliant on action cards. You can kind of catch your opponent off guard with it. It's another option just for dealing damage, which Rai sometimes needs. And importantly, it banishes itself on attack, which means it then sets up your Rai Stormseer even more by adding another arcane card to your banishment to increase his level. So it's an interesting card. I'll be curious to see how Rai decks adapt around this. I don't think you just slam it into every Rai deck, but I think it's the kind of card where like a crafty deck builder can include a couple copies and maybe score a game or two that they wouldn't have otherwise, because the opponent is expecting Arcane Blast but ends up getting elementals to the face instead. So Conduit of the Mad Mage, I think this is one of the payoff cards now for the combo version of Rai, the kind that's using Power Overwhelming and Reckless Endeavor and just kind of like playing a million spells in one turn, because that's where Conduit of the Mad Mage gets you a huge benefit. It is a 1-cost arcane ally mage human with 0 power and 2 life that says whenever you activate a mage spell action, wake up Conduit of the Mad Mage and it gets +1 attack until end of turn. At the beginning of your end phase, sacrifice Conduit of the Mad Mage, and it has floating memory, which is actually really awesome on this card. Floating memory on an advanced element arcane card means that no matter where this ends up going, you can get it into your banishment, and you're actually happy to use ways to discard it. So for example, in Fire Rai, using cards like Creative Shock, even though if you don't get the shock off of it, you can use those kind of cards to discard it, to get it into your discard pile, and then pay for something of floating memory, and then it ends up in your banishment, which is exactly where you want it to be to get Rai Stormseer's buff. But this whole first paragraph here, whenever you activate a mage spell action, wake up Conduit of the Mad Mage, and it gets +1 attack on a turn. So you can imagine in this deck, when you get to the point where you are able to use Power Overwhelming, that's a mage spell action, gain a bunch of levels, play some efficiency spells, mage spell actions, keep waking it up. Every time you just basically, as soon as it gets 1 attack, you want to attack with it, play your next thing. Maybe it's a Power Overwhelming. It then readies, it wakes up, it gets +1 attack, you attack again. Then your next thing you play Careful Study. Okay. Wake up, attack again. Then you play Fireball or something, and then wake up, attack again, and then you play a Reckless Endeavor, and then you wake up, attack again, and then you play a Crux Sight, and then you wake up and attack again, and it just powers up 1 damage each time. So this is on this turn, it costs you 1, but if you were playing this combo deck where you could play a bunch of cheap spells that keep kind of cycling cards and keep moving you through your deck, and like Reckless Endeavor bringing your memory back into your hand, letting you then replay a bunch of those cards that you used as memory instead. This card ends up being able to push a ton of damage, and I think this is a good win condition for that kind of deck to be able to play. I could see maybe a deck that's using Conduit of the Mad Mage as well as Advent of the Stormcaller, and then really focusing on this kind of Power Overwhelming, Reckless Endeavor, Crux Sight. Like that might be like the general package. And the win condition for this deck is either some combination of Conduit of the Mad Mage attacks or Advent of the Stormcaller damage. If you can get an excessively high life with with power overwhelming, or high level with power overwhelming. So that's where I see this fitting in. It's a 4 of in that deck for sure. But it might actually still play well enough in normal Rye with that floating memory to just be able to slot in, especially if you have ways to discard it. You may still want to slot some of it in. I'm not totally sure, but I do really like it in that combo build. I think it's a really cool card. Okay, Erratic Bolt. So this is another arcane spell option for Rye. He's got a ton of them here. Erratic Bolt is a 4-cost slow spell that deals level damage to target units. So this is very much like a Fireball. It costs a little more. It actually does a little less damage, but it does have class bonus. You may banish 2 cards at random from your memory. If you do, draw 2 cards. As you mentioned in the previous video, drawing 2 cards, banishing 2 cards from your memory and drawing 2 cards is way better than discarding 2 cards and drawing 2 cards, because you already used those 2 cards to pay for a cost. And now it's effectively like you are just getting 2 cards back in your hand for the turn to do a little more with. It's possible that this even plays nicely with this Conduit of the Mad Mage thing, because it does provide ways of you getting cards, getting more cards back into your hand to continue playing more spells. It adds an additional damage bonus, so you don't have to go quite as far with a single card. It's a pretty solid spell. And I think the other thing about this is that it doesn't have the same, man, I'm torn on this. It's like, you maybe want to play this with Arcane Blast. Maybe what we like with this is in like non-fire Rye. So in maybe like Wind Rye or Water Rye, where Rye needs to push a little bit more damage, having Erratic Bolt gives you another set of Arcane Blasts, Arcane Blast 5 through 8 or whatever in your deck, as well as kind of having a little extension play, but that Arcane Blast doesn't get to do. On the flip side, it's not free when you get to a high enough level like Arcane Blast is. So give and take, a little give and take there, but it's a cool card. I think it's a great option for Arcane to have. And I think if you decide that your deck needs some more win con options, this does give you that extra reach that you need to finish the game, as well as being able to target allies. But Rise at the end of game is off. Rise just about hitting face. Face is the place, baby. And then finally, if you played the starter decks, you're familiar with this card. Spell Shield Arcane is an incredible arcane rare. It costs 3, but it costs 1 less to activate for Mage. It is a fast spell that says the next time damage would be dealt to your champion this turn, prevent that damage. Put in an amount of enlightened counters on your champion, equal the amount of damage prevented this way. It's an amazing card in the right scenario. It is sometimes an unfortunately not exciting card when the opponent's just going wide but doesn't have any big damage. But in like Rye mirror matches, it is the like game-changing card. Is the card you hold on to with everything you've got, because preventing an Arcane Blast and gaining 11 enlightened counters is like a huge swing in your favor. But even against, we've seen like assassins with coup de grace. We've seen warriors with the burning double damage spell. Not flame sweep. Rending flames. That one. I guess rending flame plays. This can prevent a whole lot of damage and give you a whole lot of enlightened counters. So even if you're just preventing 4 or 5 damage, it feels very good with this card to do that. It feels very, very good to do that. So, yeah, it's a great card. I don't think you usually play 4 of it unless you have a metagame where you're really expecting to see a bunch of it, a bunch of decks where you need it to win the game. But it's always one that you can slot a couple copies in, and if you can hold on to it in the right matchup, it's very, very good. Spirit Blade Ascension, my favorite Crux card. This is the one that allows you to return a sword regalia you own to your material deck, and then choose a sword regalia card from your material deck. It could be the one you just returned to your deck or your banishment and put it onto the field. This allows you to cheat in the Prismatic Edge or the Sword of Avarice, get the on-enter effects for them. It allows you can materialize a Sword of Avarice, draw 2 cards, Spirit Blade Ascension it, put it back in, draw 2 more cards. It only costs 1 to play, so it allows you to keep like filtering things, and it allows you to reset the durability on something so you can attack with it more without it going away. It allows you to get back a sword you lost earlier. I mean, like it's again, a very flexible card, very nice spell to play. A good one for Lorraine to have access to if you're very keen on getting some of those like sword loopy combos at the end of the game too. Spirit Blade Infusion is a very solid card for kind of just progressing your win con at the end of the game. This is sort of a combo piece more than anything though. The card, it's a 2-cost action. It costs 2 less to activate if your champion has dealt damage this turn. So it is free if you've already attacked this turn. But then it's a fast spell that says until end of turn, target sword weapon gets +3 damage and on champion hit draw a card. So it does require for you to cast it for free. It does require you to have already attacked, and thus the +3 sword damage to the sword weapon and the on champion hit isn't as useful unless you have another thing in your hand to allow you to ready your champion, which Crux does, to be fair. So that's why I say it's more of like a combo piece. But on the other hand, there are some interesting combos I'm excited to see with, again, from our super rare video, Galahad allowing you to use your swords with him as well, an ally as well. This can allow you to pump up a sword to be very powerful, attack with your champion, play this for free, pump up the sword to be more powerful, attack with Galahad using the sword, ready your champion using another spirit card, Spirit's Blessing. This is like an example of one, the next one that does it. And then attack again using your more powerful weapon. You're drawing cards each time either Galahad or your champion are attacking with the infused weapon. So definitely a cool combo piece. It does require you to have that combo mentality. And I'm not sure Lorraine always needs to do that, but I think some Lorraine decks will like that more than others. And it'll just kind of depend on how you want your end game to take shape and what sort of play around it you want your opponents to have access to as well. Spirit's Blessing, like I said, this is a way to wake up your champion. As initial cost to activate, you have to return a regalia you control to its owner's material deck. So it does usually want you to have a weapon out there that you maybe haven't used, or you put plenty of durability counters on. This is where Clarent can be a nice sword for Lorraine to materialize, because it does have a lot of durability counters. It allows you to keep attacking while still having some fodder for some of these late game Crux cards. But when you play it, it costs 1 and it wakes up your champion and you get to draw a card. So you do get to attack again. The combo with Infusion is just really powerful with this, of course, because the on champion hit will keep you drawing cards. You get to draw a card off of this. You get to do a lot of damage. It's just like, it works really well, but it's the combo piece. It's for combo Crux. So you have to be ready to kind of set that combo up with that deck. Looking at the Luxem cards, we have Korhazi Infiltrator. It's a 2-cost, 3-power, 2-life Luxem ally, assassin human. It has stealth. And this is one of the reveal trigger cards. So as we mentioned in the other video, Luxem has a lot of, has a sort of a subset of cards that are either about revealing your memory or giving you benefits when you reveal your memory. This is one that gives you a benefit when it's revealed from your memory. When it's revealed from your memory, you may put it onto the field. So you can only reveal it through other effects. One of Xander's level 3s allows you to reveal things. And then a bunch of other cards in Luxem just have like ways for you to reveal cards from your memory. So it's kind of like you can kind of ambush your opponent by having these infiltrators in there. And then it's just all it really is after it comes into play, though. It's a good statted creature with stealth, which isn't bad at all. When you free play it, that's awesome. So I think this will definitely see play, but I'm curious. We just don't quite know what the shape of those assassin Luxem decks are going to look like yet. But I do think there will be ones that really lean into this sort of memory revealing bonus thing. All right, I mentioned earlier that Disintegrate was the second most flexible removal spell. This is the actual most flexible removal spell in the game. Excalibur Cleansing Light is a 2-cost action. Now, this is important. This is a Luxem card. It is an action warrior spell with class bonus. You do not get this class bonus effect when you are just using the assassin. You actually only get this class bonus when you level into Trisket, the super rare we looked at. Not level into Trisket, but when you replace your champion with Trisket from the super rare video. Towards the end of the super rare video, we looked at Trisket and how it's a very interesting card. And for good reason, too. First of all, this is already a good card. I mean, like, class bonus aside, 2-cost Luxem spell that says destroy target non-champion object. Any regalia or any ally in play, any domain in play can be destroyed as well. Is the only thing in the game currently that destroys a domain. It's a fast spell as well. So it's basically statted exactly where you want it to be, just as a flexible removal spell. But then if you play this in a deck where you're trying to get into Trisket, when you are in Trisket, when you are a warrior with Luxem, you have class bonus, choose up to 2 non-norm elements. Players can't materialize or activate cards of those elements until the start of your next turn. So basically, what you will call with this is whatever your opponent's basic element is and whatever your opponent's advanced element is. in a one-on-one game like that. And then the opponent can only play norm element things until your next turn when you use this, which if this destroying something and then shutting them down from playing any of their best cards, if that doesn't like push you to the point where you can win the game, you were in a pretty bad spot. I'm not sure anything will at that point, but yeah, incredibly cool card. I think one of the cards that makes Trisket have a real payoff to it. Trisket should be able to get through the game if you can resolve an Excalibur Cleansing Light at that point, as long as you can get Trisket out in the first place. But even outside of that, I think you're going to want to play this in Assassin decks, at least a couple copies, just to have, especially the Assassin decks that are a little more controlling and disruptive, just to have this kind of flexible removal option. Okay, let's look at Uncover the Plot. Uncover the Plot is a 2-cost action assassin skill. It is a slow skill. I do really like this card. This is a card that kind of does a little bit of everything, and I really appreciate that about it. It's target player reveals all cards in their memory, draw a card, and then class bonus put 2 preparation counters on your champion. So in the Assassin deck, obviously if you're playing the Luxem build that likes to reveal things from their memory, you can use it to target yourself to reveal your memory and get any of the effects in there. You can also use it to target your opponent and just see what they're working with. At that late stage in the game, you might be able to find what kind of like win condition they're working towards and prepare yourself for it. It draws a card, so it replaces a card that you spend to play it. And then you also get to put 2 preparation counters on your champion, which is actually quite a bit of preparation. That's halfway to your coup de grace being active. So I think that's a pretty powerful effect. I think a lot of Assassin decks will like that, especially, obviously, most importantly, the reveal ones. The preparation, like the coup de grace style focus, the coup de grace focused ones, if coup de grace is one of your win cons, and anything kind of in between may find some use for this, but it has more use outside of just doing those things, which is what I really like about it. It's pretty flexible. Okay, looking at the Terra cards now, Call the Pack is a 4-cost Tamer skill with class bonus. This card costs 2 less to activate, so it's only 2 costs normally. Again, we only have Terra is only in Tamer currently. In the future, that'll matter more, but currently it's always going to cost 2 for Tamer. It is a slow skill, but it says for each animal ally you control, you may put a beast ally card from your hand onto the field. I love this. I think this is a huge build around kind of, and build your strategy around. This is the kind of card where when you put it in your deck, if you see it early on in the game, you know what your win con is going to be. You know what you're focused on. You want to make sure you build your deck so that you have enough animals and enough beasts, and then you're going to try to filter your play a little bit. You're going to try and make sure your whole game you're setting up towards getting a few animals in play, resolving a Call the Pact, playing a few beasts out of nowhere, and then crashing in for a bunch of damage on your opponent to end the game. Definite game-ending style card, but it does require some setup and it does require some deck building. Again, these Terra decks, they're really going to be walking that tightrope. But in the deck where you're playing this, you're probably playing a 4 of. Command the Hunt. This is a 4-cost slow Tamer skill. Costs 2 less to activate if no units have attacked this turn. So you want to use it as your first command if possible to get it to be a 2-cost. Allies you control get +2 damage to +2 power and gain vigor until end of turn. Those allies must attack champions this turn. I think this is the best action party buff, action board wide buff. +2 damage and vigor on everything. Is the cost is they have to attack champions this turn, but I think generally your goal is going to be like play a couple beasts, then play Command the Hunt, and then swing with your whole board for a game ending. Again, like a haymaker style play. So you can totally play this with Call the Pack as well. So if you have, all you need is 6 cards in hand, Command the Hunt, Call the Pack, and 4 other. No, wait, then you need some beasts too. You need a pretty big hand to do that, actually. Once you start doing the math, it doesn't necessarily work out, but if you can get a sufficiently big hand, I guess it's great. But these might actually be cards that you play a little differently, a little separately from each other, depending. I could see maybe Command the Hunt being especially useful in a deck that's really animal focused and is just running like squirrels, like a Fire Tamer with squirrels and woodland squirrels and Embertail squirrels, playing a lot of just cheap animals and just flooding the board with them and making the opponent just like have to deal with it. And if they don't, you Command the Hunt and you kill them. So I think that's pretty sweet too. I do like the vigor here too, because it means that You attack with everything, and then if your opponent wants to deal with the board next turn by attacking, you're going to retaliate against everything. So I think that's actually a pretty cute ability right there. Invoke Dominance. This is a 1-cost action tamer spell, fast with Preserve, which is so far it's been a Terra unique ability that says put this card into your material deck preserved as it resolves. So instead of going to your discard pile, it goes into your material deck. And then as you materialize, instead of materializing something, you can return a preserved card to your hand. So you can actually have this every single turn if you give up your materialize phase for it. And that could be pretty useful depending on what stage of the game and what your board looks like, because when you play this card, your champion gets +3 levels until end of turn. You just can't activate non-ally cards this turn, but that can be that level boost can allow you to activate some of the massive pride creatures that you need a huge level to be able to attack with, like Virtus Gaia's Roar. This is actually our last rare that we're looking at, as a 4-cost unique ally Tamer Beast Lion, 8 power, 6 life, pride 10. Class bonus on enter, allies you control get +1 power for each animal and or beast ally card in your graveyard until end of turn. This is huge. He buffs himself too, as well as all of your allies. This is where I think like water tamer, if there is a self-mill thing, Water Tamer's got to be an option for it, because between this and the Lakeside Serpent, there's a lot of benefit for having water animals and water beasts in your graveyard. And the biggest catch is just trying to get to that Pride 10, but I do think that's where like Invoke Dominance would be played specifically in a deck where you're playing Virtus Gaia's Roar, and any of these ways to get yourself to Pride 10 to be able to get that massive attack the turn he comes into play is huge, because if you've got like 6 allies in your graveyard late in the game, you have a 14 power attack sitting there. If you can't get Pride 10, you don't get that attack. But if you can, that's one. And then all your other allies are also +6 power still too. So you should be able to win the game with that at that point. Notably, this is also a 4-cost, which makes it very easy to play off of the super rare we looked at that allows you to cheat an ally into play, cheat a beast into play, and then direct an attack towards it. But however, you can't retaliate unless you have Pride 10 on your opponent's turn, which a level 10 on your opponent's turn, which I doubt you will, but maybe it's possible. I'm not sure. But yeah, remember that the Pride 10 means they can't attack, intercept, retaliate, or activate abilities unless your level is 10 or more. So that is all of the rares we've looked at. A quick run through all of them. I hope you guys found that to be an interesting video. Again, we have a couple more of these coming. I'm going to be doing uncommons and commons probably coming just a little bit later, but those videos are on their way. We will look at every single card in this set, and I'll give you my take on everything and give you some ideas for deck building, just like we've done in this video. If I've already published them, they're going to be appearing on the screen in just a moment. But I do want to give a shout out again. I think I missed this on the last one. I shout out to our patrons. Thank you guys so much for your support, which makes our videos possible. And if you guys did find this interesting, if you did enjoy this, first of all, I would love to hear your comments. What do you think about my opinions on these? Did I get any cards right or wrong? Are there any that you're super hyped about from here? And then go ahead and leave a like on the video if you did enjoy it, and go ahead and subscribe as well if you do want to catch more TCG content for Grand Archive and other TCGs. We cover a lot of different TCGs here. Grand Archive is one we're super excited about, but if you're as excited as us, go ahead and click on the videos here to catch the other parts of our complete set review, and then we will catch you guys in future videos here on Main Deck TCG Network. We'll see you guys later.